good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're watching this. Welcome to this video where we're going to be going through fraction equations. So these, as the name implies, it's going to be equations that have fractions. So let's get right into it. What if we have x minus 5 that is equal to a 6 over an x? So there's a presence of a fraction there. So what do I do when I'm solving these type of equations? The first step is I need to find what my LCD is. So in a case where you only have one denominator, that denominator will be my LCD. I take that LCD, I multiply everything with my LCD, so that's my step number 2. You multiply every term with LCD, right? So x times x would give me an x squared. X times negative 5 would give me a negative 5x. And x times the fraction would just give me the 6. Then now the fraction is gone. That's what should always happen when you times with your LCD. Then now I can write it in standard form. So that's step number 3. Write it in standard form. So step number 1 is to find your LCD. Step number 2 is to multiply with the LCD. Then once you have it in standard form, you could use your quadratic formula, or you could factorize this guy. Factors of negative 6 that add to give me a negative 5 is minus 6 and a positive 1. And so at this point, you can factorize it, or you could use your quadratic formula. So I'm writing the steps while I'm doing it, or you could use a quadratic formula. I factorized, so at this point x is equal to 6 and x is equal to negative 1. So those are the 2 solutions that I should be getting for that guy. That was question 1. So these steps here, we're going to be applying these steps for every single question, right? So let's do question number 2. All right, so question number 2, we have it in front of us. This time, our denominator, the only denominator that I have is x minus 1. So what will be my LCD? If you only have that one denominator, then that denominator will be your LCD. Then step number 2, remember it says multiply everything with your LCD. So if I times this first fraction with my LCD, I'll just get the numerator. If I times the x with the LCD, I will get this expression. And lastly, if I times the 5 with the LCD, I will get this expression. Then at this point, I need to multiply it out and get it to standard form. I'll have this with the 5x minus 5. I collect all the like terms. X squared minus x minus 5x is a positive 3 plus a 5 will give me 0. Then x squared minus 6x plus 8 is all equal to 0. Then now I have it in standard form. I could just factorize this. Factors of 8 that add to give me a negative 6 is a negative 4 and a negative 2. So now I have that guy. I could just say x is equal to a 4 or x is equal to a positive 2. And these are our solutions. All right, one other thing I forgot to mention in the first example that we did is that with fractions, you also need to apply your restrictions. there's restrictions that we need to apply. So if you go out here, maybe your final step here is is to get the final answer, but not just that, is to also apply restrictions. So I will show you what restrictions are. So in this case, where is our x? Our x is in the denominator. And what value can that x never be? What do I mean by that? What value, if I substitute for that x, I will get an undefined fraction. Remember, the only time you get an undefined fraction is if you are dividing by 0. This is always undefined. Any division by 0 is undefined. So in this case, if x was equal to 0, then this equation would not even make sense. It would be undefined. So I couldn't even solve it. So I need to put this restriction that x can never be equal to 0. This is my restriction down here. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if it was equal to 0, then this would not make sense. So I need to put my restriction there. So you put your two answers there, but you also need to put your restriction, the one or two values that x can never be. In this case, which value is going to give me a 0 at the denominator there? The value of x that I substitute that will give me a 0 there is if x is equal to a 1, because a 1 minus a 1 will give me a 0. So this is my restriction, that x can never be equal to a 1. Restriction. Again, why? Is because that thing will blow up and give me undefined. So in this case, these are correct, but that is also part of my answer. You need to include your restrictions. All right, now let's do example number 3. All right, so for example number 3, we have two denominators that are not the same. We have an x and we have an x plus 2. Those denominators are not the same. They are also not multiples of each other. So if the guys are not the same and they're not multiples of each other, multiplying them together would give me my LCD. So this is my LCD, which is x, open bracket, x plus 2. So now that I have my LCD, what do I do with it? I times everything with the LCD. If I times this fraction with my LCD, let me just write it so you can see what is actually happening. So that's how it looks. For the first guy, this is my second guy, and that's how it looks for my second guy. And lastly, the 1 also needs to be multiplied by your LCD. So that's how it looks when it multiplies a 1. So the x and the x are going to cancel, and the 2 times the bracket. So I'll have a 2x plus 2 minus the x plus 2 and the x plus 2 are going to cancel, leaving me with just the x times in that bracket. So I put it in front like that, and I put that binomial in bracket. And here what you're going to have is you're going to eventually have the x that is distributing inside of that bracket there. Then let's distribute 2 times into that bracket is a 2x plus a 4. Negative x times into this bracket is a negative x squared minus x. And a positive x times into this bracket is a x squared plus a 2x. All right, then I need to put it in standard form. There's no fractions anymore. Collect all my terms on this side. I'll get a negative 2x squared from this guy and this guy. Then this guy and this guy and this guy, I will get a negative x. And then I have lastly the positive 4, all equal to 0. And at this point, let me get them all to be positive. X squared plus x minus 4 is equal to 0. So essentially, I just multiplied by negative, or negative 1. Yeah, that's what I just did there. I just multiplied everything by negative. It gives me this guy. This guy, I think I can factorize. Just take the 2, times it across. No, I don't think you can factorize that. So I would just use my quadratic formula. 2 is equal to a, b is equal to 1, c is equal to a negative 4. Plug it into my quadratic formula where x negative b plus minus 1 squared minus 4 to the negative 4, all divided by a 2a. And so the values that you get there. Alrighty, so you get these two values. X is equal to 1.18 and x is equal to negative 1.69. But again, as much as you get your solutions there, there's one last thing that I need to state, my restriction. So my first restriction is that x cannot be equal to 0. Why? Because of this fraction here. And then for this guy here, x cannot be equal to a negative 2. So x cannot be equal to a negative 2. So these are my restrictions. So you have to always state these guys. If you forget them, you might lose 1 mark for this type of questions. All right, let's do the next one. All right, so this is our next example that we need to solve. But before we get to solving it, we notice something, that this bracket here is an x plus 1, but this one here is a 1 minus x. So those are not the same. And so it wouldn't make sense to take an x plus 1 and make that my LCD. It has to be both of them because they're not the same. So again, if those guys are not the same and they're not multiples of each other, then taking them both out would be your LCD. So I'm making both of them multiplying like that my LCD. So my first fraction, let me write it in black. Just want to show you the multiplication with the LCD part. This first fraction times my LCD, which is x plus 1, 1 minus x. Right? This is being subtracted by the second fraction times your LCD again. So everything needs to be times by my LCD, guys. Not just the fractions, even the to the side needs to be times by the LCD. If you forget to times the right hand side, you will lose marks. Your answer will not be correct, guys. So these would cancel, leaving me with just the one that is times in that guy, which is just going to be that bracket there. These would cancel, leaving me with just this bracket times in that bracket. I'm going to leave the negative 3x minus 1 with the x plus a 1, all equal to the 2 needs to multiply that brackets as well. So I get this expression here. There's no fractions anymore, so I just need to expand those brackets. I leave this guy, I leave the negative outside, I expand this bracket. I'll get 3x squared plus 3x minus x minus 1. I leave my 2 outside, I expand these two brackets, I get an x minus an x squared plus a 1 minus an x. Alright, so let's just get rid of this negative inside, put it inside, but before that, this and that would give me a positive 2x. So once I times it with the negative, it will be a negative 2x. That 1 times the negative will be a positive 1. And in this case, these x's are going to cancel. So I'm left with the negative 2x squared plus a 2. And then I collect my like terms. I'm going to bring everything this side. Negative 3x squared plus a 2x squared. With minus x minus 2x. With a plus 1 minus 2. And there we go. This, that, negative x squared. This, that, negative 3x. This, that, and that would give me just a 0. Right? And then at this point, the best way to factorize that is to take out a common factor. You take out x as my common factor, or let's just times it first with the negative. If I times it with the negative, it looks like this. And if I take out x as my common factor, it looks like that. And so x is equal to 0, or x is equal to a negative 3. So these are my two solutions that I was looking for. But again, my restriction. So for this fraction, my restriction will be x cannot be equal to 1. And for this restriction, will be that x cannot be equal to a positive 1. Oh, sorry, this should be x cannot be equal to a negative 1. And the other one is that x cannot be equal to a positive. So these are my restrictions. You don't have to label them as restrictions. As soon as you put the cannot be equal to, as long as you put this sign here, we already know it's a restriction. So you don't have to label them as restrictions. I keep doing that for your benefit, but you don't have to, right? You could just state what they are. So let's try the next one. I'm going to do, I think, 2 more of these. All right, for this next one, we might need to factorize our denominator. So we need to factorize this denominator first, right? You see it's a trinomial. So let's do the factorization first before we can find LCD. Factors of negative 2 that add to give me a negative 1 is a negative 2 with a positive 1. And we still have the rest of the fraction there. So we have this guy. So from this we can see that, the x plus 1 and the x plus 1s are the same. So what would be my LCD? My LCD would be that x plus 1, but with this other denominator that's not the same as any other denominator, which is x minus a 2. Again, what am I going to do with that? I'm going to times every single fraction with it. So if I times this fraction with my LCD, then every bracket, well, the x minus 2 and the x plus 1 are going to cancel. So I'll be left with just this guy. Right? If I times this second fraction with my LCD, the x plus 1 brackets are going to cancel. So I'll be left with an x plus a 2 that is from the numerator, that is timesing this guy, the x minus the 2. Then this negative 1 is also going to be multiplied, and this is what you get. So I didn't show you the step where I'm timesing it. I just did it all in my brain, but this is what you're going to get. At some point, once you've been doing it for a while, you can actually see it. So this x times x is an x squared minus 2x plus 2x minus a 4. And this one, I'm going to keep my negative outside. X squared minus 2x plus x minus 2. And there we go. Then we have x squared minus 3x minus 7. x squared, these are going to cancel. We have a minus 4 there. With the minus x squared, once this negative goes inside, this and this is going to be a minus x. With that negative, it's a positive x. And then lastly, this and that guy is going to be a positive 2. Right? Then at this point, these x squareds cancel, but this one becomes a positive on that side. Negative 3x with the negative x will give me a negative 4x. And then lastly, the negative 7 with the positive 4 would give me a negative 3. With the negative 2, it's a negative 5. So we get this. And once you've factorized this, of which you can, factors of negative 5 that add to give me this guy is a negative 5 with a positive 1. So x is a 5. And so x is a negative 1. Again, restrictions. So again, you could just look at your LCD to get the restriction. My first restriction is that x cannot be equal to a negative 1, because this guy would give me a 0, particularly this fraction here and this fraction here, that would give me a 0. But for this guy here, x cannot be equal to a positive 2. X cannot be equal to a positive 2. So again, these need to form part of my answers, and these are my restrictions. And there we go. Let's do one more of these type of questions. Alrighty, let's do this last question. Again, like you've seen with the previous question, you might need to factorize these. So this, I need to apply trinomial type factorization. This, I need to take out a highest common factor. And that's how I factorize those. Let's factorize them first. So x minus 1, x squared plus 7x. Sorry, I'm not factorizing it. I need to factorize it. So it's those two brackets. Factors of 7 that add to give me a factors of 12 that add to give me a 7. These are your factors. And then if you take out x there, you get an x plus a 4. And the last one is still an x plus a 3. So we have this, looks nice, but what we notice is that, ooh, the x plus a 4 is present there as well. X plus a 3 is present there as well. But what does this guy have extra? He has this x here that is extra. So what would be my LCD? My LCD would be those guys, all of them together. So it would be the x, it will be the x plus 4, and it will be the x plus 3. So this big expression here is my LCD. Again, what am I doing with that LCD? I'm multiplying it with each of these guys. So if this guy times this with the LCD, what I'll get is that these two brackets are going to canceling with those two brackets there. And so x is going to be left. So x will multiply with the x minus 1. Right? If this guy is multiplying with the LCD, you will notice that x and the x plus 4 will cancel with the x and the x plus 4. What's left? It's this bracket here. So the 5 will multiply with the x plus a 3. Then with the last one, the x plus the 3 is gone, and so what is left is this guy and this guy. So you get a 4 with an x plus a 4. And there we go. So our fractions are now gone. We just need to expand this. X squared minus x. 5x plus 15 minus 4, let's expand the bracket first, x squared plus 4x, and now the 4 can distribute inside. We get a negative 4x squared minus a 16x. Then we collect our like terms. This comes to the other side and adds to give me a 5x squared. This comes to the other side to subtract to give me a negative 16, but once you add it with that, you get a negative positive 10. A positive 10x. Right? And then lastly, the 15 is going to come and subtract. So we have this guy. And at this point, you can divide everything by a positive 5. Divide this by 5, divide this by 5, divide this by 5. So you'll end up with an x squared plus a 2x minus a 3 is all 0. And our factors of negative 3 that add to give me a positive 2 is a positive 1. Sorry, it's a negative 1 with a positive 3. And there we go. Then what does this tell us? It tells us that x is equal to a 1 and that x is equal to a negative 3. And what are my restrictions? If I remember correctly, one of the denominators was x. So x cannot be equal to 0. The other denominator was x plus 4. So x cannot be equal to a negative 4. The last denominator was an x plus 3. So x cannot be equal to a negative 3. So what does this tell me? It tells me I need to reject this guy. This cannot make sense as a solution. And there we go. We have all our restrictions. These are our restrictions. And then this is the only correct answer for this expression. Right? Let me just scroll up to see that I've done the correct thing. So here as well, you would actually need to reject this negative 1 as your solution. Because why? It's part of the restriction there. So yes, we've solved it and we got negative 1, but yeah, mathematically, it would not make sense to put negative 1 into that expression because we're going to get an undefined denominator. All right. Then I notice every other thing is the same. So let me reiterate the procedure to you. And then you can take this into your practice and it should help you. So step number 1, sometimes you might need to factorize the denominator. You never need to factorize the numerator. You always need to factorize the denominator. Then number 2, you need to find your LCD. Find the lowest common denominator. Find the LCD. Then step number 3, you need to multiply every term with the LCD. So that includes the left-hand side and the right-hand side. That includes all the fractions and the non-fractions, right? Then once you've multiplied with your LCD, you need to make equation into standard form, or get your equation to be, make equation to be in standard form, to be in standard form. I hope you guys know what I mean by standard form. I mean, it has to look like this, where you have ax squared plus bx plus c all equal to 0. It needs to look like that. That's what standard form looks like. And then number 5, you might need to factorize if you can. Or if you can't, you might need to use your quadratic formula. Right? And then as your last step, step number 6, you need to solve and get final answer. And lastly, state restrictions. So this is very important because some of the restrictions actually do reject some of the solutions we got. So take note of that. That sometimes the restrictions do reject some of the solution, just like this one here. This restriction actually rejected that solution that we got there. So again, lastly, factorize your denominators. If you have denominators that need factorizing, find your LCD, right? Multiply every term with your LCD. That will get rid of the fraction. Then once you get rid of the fraction, you need to put it in standard form, right? I showed you what standard form looks like. Standard form is this guy that I just wrote there next to it. Then lastly, you need to factorize or use your quadratic formula. Then in your last, you need to solve it. Obviously, x is equal to something, x is equal to something, and you need to state your restrictions. So on this note, that's it from my side, guys. Good luck, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.